August Wilson's Fences, first performed in 1985, is the sixth play in his Pittsburgh cycle, which chronicles the African American experience across 10 decades. Fences is set in 1957 in a working-class African American neighborhood in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. The play centers on Troy Maxson, a former Negro League baseball player turned garbage collector, and his relationships with his family, especially his son Cory. Wilson explores intergenerational conflict, racial injustice, and the psychological fences people build to protect themselves from disappointment. Fences won the Pulitzer Prize for Drama and the Tony Award for Best Play in 1987. Structural overview. The play consists of 2 acts with multiple scenes. It takes place mostly in Troy's backyard, where a physical fence is slowly being built, serving as both a literal and metaphorical device. Act 1, Scene 1. Introducing Troy and Bono. Summary. Troy Maxson and his friend Jim Bono arrive home from work on a Friday. They share stories, drink, and joke about their boss. Bono raises concerns about Troy's flirtations with Alberta, a woman Troy is seeing on the side. Troy insists he's just being friendly. Troy also criticizes Major League Baseball for discriminating against black players and brags about his past talents. His wife, Rose, joins them and challenges Troy's cynicism. We are introduced to their son Cory, who is being recruited for college football. Analysis. Troy is immediately established as charismatic, strong-willed, and bitter. His disillusionment with racial inequality in sports feeds into his overprotective control over Cory. Rose acts as a moral balance, and Bono as a witness to Troy's complexities. This scene sets up the central tension: Troy's unresolved resentment over racial injustice, and how it impacts his relationships. Act 1, Scene 2, Cory's football dream. Summary. Cory asks his mother where Troy is, as he wants to discuss the recruiter from North Carolina. Rose is optimistic, but Troy later tells Cory he's forbidden to play football, insisting that Cory should get a job. Analysis. Troy's refusal stems from his own disillusionment. He projects his failures onto Cory, convinced that white society won't allow black men to succeed. This begins the father-son conflict that will intensify throughout the play. Act 1, Scene 3-4, Family tensions and Troy's past. Summary. Troy complains to Rose about Cory's disobedience. Cory wants to play football. Troy wants him to learn responsibility. In a heated conversation, Troy tells Cory, "I don't have to like you. I owe you nothing but what's right." Troy recounts his difficult childhood, how he left home at 14, became a thief, went to jail, and found his talent for baseball. He also talks about his brother Gabriel, a war veteran with a metal plate in his head, who receives disability checks that helped Troy buy their house. Analysis. These scenes flesh out Troy's background and bitterness. His moral rigidity and emotional detachment reflect his survival strategy. His famous line to Cory highlights his belief that fatherhood is about duty, not affection, a legacy of generational trauma. Gabriel serves as a symbol of innocence and spiritual disruption, representing the damage caused by both war and systemic neglect. Act 1, Scene 5, Building the Fence. Summary. Rose asks Troy to finish building the fence. Bono tells Troy that fences can be built to keep people out or in. Rose wants the fence as protection. Cory and Troy work together, though the tension is palpable. Analysis. The fence becomes a central metaphor. It represents barriers, protection, exclusion, and connection. For Rose, it's about holding her family together. For Troy, it's something to control, but he delays its completion, mirroring his reluctance to engage emotionally. Act 2, Scene 1, Troy's infidelity exposed. Summary. Troy tells Rose that Alberta is pregnant with his child. Rose is devastated but composed. She accuses Troy of turning to another woman because he felt trapped. He responds that Alberta gave him an escape. Rose asserts her strength and decides to stay, not for him, but for herself. Analysis. This is a turning point. Troy's affair shatters the family dynamic. Rose's dignity and emotional strength contrast with Troy's selfishness. Her line, "You always talking about what you give, but you take too," reveals how Troy's self-pity blinds him to others' sacrifices. The scene shifts audience sympathy toward Rose. Act 2, Scene 2. Death of Alberta and arrival of Raynell. Summary. Alberta dies in childbirth. Troy brings the baby, Raynell, home and asks Rose to help raise her. Rose agrees, saying, "This child's got a mother. But you a womanless man." Analysis. Rose accepts Raynell, but not Troy. This act of care is both maternal and moral, reflecting Christian themes of grace and redemption. Troy's isolation begins, and his relationships continue to fracture. Act 2, Scene 3-4, Father and son clash. Summary. Cory confronts Troy about the affair and about treating Rose badly. Their conflict escalates into a physical altercation. Troy throws Cory out of the house. Later, Troy speaks to death directly, daring it to come for him. He finishes building the fence. Analysis. Troy's final confrontation with Cory reflects his failure as a father. He cannot allow his son to outgrow him. The fight is both literal and symbolic, a struggle over identity, respect, and independence. Troy's monologue to death is theatrical and defiant. He views death as an old opponent, something he can negotiate with or fight off. Act 2, Scene 5, Troy's funeral. Summary. 7 years later, Troy has died. Cory returns home as a Marine. He initially refuses to attend the funeral but is persuaded by Rose. Raynell, now a young girl, sings with Cory in the yard. Gabriel arrives and performs a spiritual dance, attempting to open the gates of heaven for Troy. Analysis. Cory's return offers a resolution and reflection. He begins to understand Troy, not to forgive, but to move forward. Raynell, a symbol of new life, connects the past and the future. Gabriel's ritual, though childlike and nonsensical, becomes mystically profound, suggesting that Troy's soul, despite his flaws, is worthy of rest. Character analysis. Troy Maxson. Troy is a complex, deeply flawed protagonist. He is proud, articulate, and charismatic but also bitter, controlling, and emotionally distant. Once a promising baseball player, Troy was barred from the major leagues due to racial segregation, and his dream died. He becomes a garbage collector, embittered and skeptical of white society's fairness. Troy's tragedy lies in how his pain leads him to dominate and alienate those around him, especially Cory. He loves his family but lacks the tools to express it healthily. He is a tragic figure in the classical sense, destroyed not by fate, but by his own internal walls, his fences. Rose Maxson. Rose is the moral and emotional anchor of the play. She embodies love, patience, and quiet strength. Her marriage to Troy is rooted in devotion, but she evolves into an independent woman. Her act of raising Raynell after Troy's betrayal shows grace and maternal resilience. Rose ultimately represents the possibility of dignity amid disappointment. Cory Maxson. Cory is an ambitious and sensitive teenager, crushed by Troy's authoritarian parenting. His dream of playing football represents the possibility of progress for black youth in the 1950s. His journey from rebellious son to thoughtful adult Marine symbolizes a new generation moving beyond old wounds, though not unscarred. Jim Bono. Bono is Troy's longtime friend and acts as a moral mirror. He offers loyalty but also warns Troy against his selfish impulses. His stable marriage contrasts with Troy's self-destruction. Bono functions as a Greek chorus, observing Troy's decline with sorrow. Gabriel Maxson. Gabriel, Troy's brother, was wounded in World War II and receives disability checks. He believes himself to be the archangel Gabriel. Gabriel is a symbol of innocence, trauma, and spiritual hope. His closing ritual is surreal yet moving, a bridge between earthly suffering and divine forgiveness. Raynell Maxon. Raynell, born from Troy's affair, becomes a symbol of rebirth and future. She never knows the full weight of her father's flaws, and her song with Cory suggests healing and continuity. Major themes. 1. The American dream and racial injustice. Troy's story exposes the false promises of the American dream for Black Americans. Despite talent and hard work, he was denied opportunity. The play critiques a society where success is racially restricted, and how that injustice reverberates across generations. 2. Fathers and sons. The core conflict, Troy versus Cory, reflects intergenerational struggle. Troy tries to protect Cory but ends up crushing his spirit. Cory wants to escape his father's bitterness but risks repeating the cycle. Wilson examines how love and trauma are passed down within families, especially Black families navigating systemic oppression. 3. Masculinity and responsibility. Troy equates manhood with stoicism, authority, and sacrifice. His refusal to show emotion or vulnerability leads to isolation. Wilson interrogates toxic masculinity, showing how it suffocates not only women but men themselves. 4. Fences, barriers and bonds. The literal fence in the play becomes a symbol of emotional boundaries. For Troy, it's a shield against pain and responsibility. For Rose, it's about protection and unity. The unfinished fence mirrors the unfinished emotional work in the family. 5. Death and legacy. Troy is preoccupied with death, personifying it as an old foe. His life is a battle against invisibility, aging, and meaninglessness. In death, however, Troy leaves behind both damage and growth. Cory's return and Gabriel's ritual suggest that his legacy is complex, not entirely tragic. Symbolism. The fence represents protection, Rose's view; separation, Troy's view; work and obligation, Cory and Troy's labor. It also reflects psychological and emotional boundaries, especially between family members. Baseball metaphors. Troy uses baseball to explain life, 3 strikes and you're out, to justify harsh decisions. Batting against death becomes his symbolic fight against fate. These metaphors illustrate Troy's obsession with control, but also reveal his emotional entrapment in a game he no longer plays. Gabriel's trumpet. Gabriel's belief that he will blow a trumpet to open heaven's gates adds a spiritual layer. His final dance, seemingly absurd, becomes transcendent, hinting at divine grace and forgiveness. Historical and cultural context. Set in the 1950s, before the civil rights movement gained full momentum. Reflects limited social mobility for Black Americans, even after World War II. The play dramatizes the psychological impact of racism, especially on Black men who internalize failure and powerlessness. August Wilson sought to represent Black life authentically, resisting assimilation into white narratives. Conclusion. Fences is a powerful and deeply human play about dreams deferred, personal demons, and the fragile bonds of family. August Wilson gives voice to the unheard struggles of African Americans, dramatizing how history lives within households, relationships, and silences. Troy Maxon's tragedy is not that he was a bad man, but that he was a man shaped by a broken world and incapable of breaking free. His death marks not an end, but a reckoning, as those left behind decide whether to carry his burdens, or build something new. Through poetic language, authentic characters, and rich symbolism, Wilson reminds us that even flawed people leave behind legacies, some painful, some beautiful, but all deeply human.